Yeah, it needed more ponies. Written by Shadowflame. Read by no one, nobody, and others.
I need more ponies.
Get stuck under a bush for a few hours.
Yes, Maxine?
Roger spoke through the phone in his study.
Hi, this is Emily's father. Have you by any chance seen her?
A small pause as the voice on the other end answered. Roger's frown only deepened.
Are you sure you haven't seen her today? She's gone missing, and if I don't find her soon, I'll have to call the police for help.
Another pause.
Yes, thank you anyway. Just tell her to call home if you can find her. Goodbye.
Roger sighed as he hung up the phone. He had called just about everyone who could have been with Emily today, but still no sign of her anywhere. He, however, didn't notice the eavesdropper crouching right outside his study door. Liz frowned when she heard her dad's phone call, cringing her teeth slightly.
Emily's missing?
As quietly as possible, Liz crept away from the door and made her way back to the kitchen. She didn't want her dad to know she'd been listening in on his phone calls. But something had seemed fishy about it. Back at their conversation when Liz got home, just from the way her dad was acting, she could tell that he was hiding something from her. And whatever it was, wasn't good either. Liz entered the kitchen, scratching the back of her head in confusion, looking towards the kitchen table where she had collected a small assortment of items on top of it. Namely, the strange blue feather from the kitchen floor, a change of women's clothes from underneath a kitchen chair, and a set of boys' clothes she had found wedged behind the couch in the living room. Back when she had found the feather, Liz had been both confused but pleased to have found it, but not knowing where it came from didn't please her. So she went searching, only to find these changes of clothes in the process. Liz puzzled to herself as she looked down at the items, as if they were some kind of jigsaw puzzle waiting to be solved.
I found these clothes and a feather, and Emily's missing. I doubt these are just coincidences. Could they be related somehow?
She proceeded to inspect the clothes again. The woman's clothes were obviously Emily's pajamas. Liz would know those filthy drabs anywhere. No offense to her sister's taste in comfort and style. These were the same pajamas Emily had worn last night, Liz remembered. But the men's clothes were what unsettled Liz. It wasn't the fact that they didn't belong to the only male who lived in the house, her dad, that unsettled Liz. It was the fact that every piece of clothing was there. A shirt, jeans, socks, a hoodie, and all the way down to a pair of boxer shorts. Why the heck would these be here? Liz frowned as she recalled that was the same question she had asked when she found the feather.
Why would any of these be here? Emily doesn't leave her clothes in the kitchen, and there's no reason that a guy's clothes would be here, and I don't think a blue-feathered bird ever came swooping through the house.
She bit her lip in frustration.
All these things appeared today, right when Emily was supposed to be home sick, only for her to disappear to... These have got to be connected in some way, but how?
Glancing towards the men's boxer shorts on the table, Liz shuddered a bit as a new thought came to mind. Could a guy have broken into the house, stripped himself and Emily, and ran off with her to... Liz shook her head.
Whoa, way too disgusting for me.
She sighed as she refocused herself.
Besides, even if that did happen, how would the feather play into this?
She inspected the men's clothes again, which seemed to be the only thing that could really provide solid clues as to what the heck was going on. Liz picked up each article of clothing, except the boxers, looking through pockets or for tags anywhere on it. To her surprise, Liz noticed that all of the insides of the clothes had bits of hair stuck to the fabric. The weird part was the fact that the hair seemed pure yellow. Not just blonde, but pure yellow. Liz kept up the search until she found one solid thing that could be considered a clue. On the inside of the hoodie, she found a small white tag, which read, "This coat belongs to Ben Hewer. If found, please return to 1335 Pleasant Drive." Liz read the name again.
Who's Ben Hewer?
Nobody was around to answer, so Liz figured the only way to find out who this guy was had to be by going to the address on the hoodie. Liz grabbed the hoodie and slung it across her shoulder.
So if I find this guy, then I'll probably find Emily too.
She paused, though.
Should I tell Dad about this?
She paused to think. If she were to tell her dad, then he'd probably go ballistic once he found both a guy's change of clothes and Emily's pajamas strewn across the kitchen table. If that happened, then overprotective father would go and call the police for some kind of rapist kidnapping. But there was always the chance that that wasn't the case. After all, the house hadn't been trashed or had any kind of a struggle, so there was always a chance that something else happened. Liz glanced back at the address on the hoodie. The house for it wasn't too far away, probably a 10-minute bike ride there, tops. She glanced towards the kitchen clock, which read 4:47. Outside the kitchen window, she could see that the sun was already about halfway across the sky between noon and sunset. Liz shrugged.
I should be back before it gets dark, unless something else comes up, and by then
She plucked the feather up off the counter.
I'll know what the heck is going on here.
She pocketed the feather, slung the hoodie around her waist and tied the arm sleeves together, and ran out to the garage to fetch her bike. A few teenagers ran through the park, laughing and playing, without much of a care in the world. They were throwing a frisbee between each other, laughing with each other whenever they dropped the pass, or just carrying on whenever they caught it. They looked really happy, but it's probably because they were doing the one thing that I wanted to do myself. No, I'm not a big fan of frisbee, so that's not it. Those teenagers got to roam free, without fear of being seen. They didn't have to hide under a bush because somebody was nearby, and could possibly see them. Ironically, it was those teenagers preventing us from leaving the bush. They were all in the grassy area about 10 feet from the bush we were hiding in. I sighed as I slumped back deeper under the cover of the bush. Well, one thing's for sure. I don't think those people are leaving anytime soon. Emily held a similar expression as me.
Are you sure we can't slip out and use the trees for cover?
I shook my head. Well, maybe you could, since you can fly and hide in the tree branches. But as for me, I can't even set hoof out there without the chance of one of those teens turning at the wrong moment and spotting me.
Then what do we do for now?
Emily asked. I guess we'll just have to wait until they're gone, I suppose. I groaned slightly as I laid back against the base of the bush. But who knows how long that'll take? Emily shrugged as she took the same position as me against another side of the bush's base.
I think they should be gone once it gets dark. Even if they don't, it should be dark enough for us to slip out unnoticed.
And until then, we just hang out? I guessed.
Yep.
We sat in silence for a moment, just idly watching the frisbee game outside our bush. Man, having to wait here until dark? Talk about killjoy. So far, this entire day has consisted of running and hiding. I think the only thing that made it better was having Emily along for the ride. But did I really miss a normal date with her just for all of this? Not to mention all of this will be over tonight, and then I'll have to return home before Mom starts worrying. My eyes widened in realization. Oh, crap! My mom is going to kill me once I get home! Emily blinked in surprise.
Why?
I groaned in reply. Well, she's just sort of overprotective of me. She doesn't like it when I get home late after dark, but that's only because she worries about me. She giggled a bit, her beautiful eyes fluttering.
Oh, it sounds like your mom loves you a lot. Why does she worry? Have you gotten into trouble before?
I paused. I was kind of unsure if I should answer. The answer itself was a sore topic for me and Mom, and neither of us really liked to talk about it. But I glanced back at Emily, whose expression faltered when she saw me pause. But she really seems kind and loving, I think. I sighed. It's just, my mom acts the way she does because of what happened last year. Emily blinked in surprise, concern in her voice.
What happened?
Well, might as well tell her. I cleared my throat. Back during the school year, my mom and dad took a holiday trip to see some of my relatives living out of town. The only ones home were myself and my 3 younger siblings. I'm the oldest sibling, so I was in charge of the other 3. But I got help whenever I needed it from the oldest of my siblings. His name was Rowan. Rowan was 16, and he usually helped out by driving the younger siblings to wherever they needed to go, while I did just about everything else. I chuckled a bit as memory came back to mind. You know, he was a brony too, but he could never get me to watch the show when he tried. Angela had already tried, but never succeeded. That is until she first turned me into a pony. Anyways, it was only myself, Rowan, and our little brother and sister at home one night, during my parents' trip. Everything went fine, up until we all headed to bed. Well, almost all of us. I was still playing some Xbox games downstairs with my younger brother, Kale. When it was time to put Kale to bed, I did, though he didn't like it. But I went ahead and checked on Rowan afterwards. I closed my eyes, biting my lip. But he was gone. Emily stared at me, confused.
Wait, where did he go?
I shook my head as the memories came rushing back, as if they had just happened. My panic when I couldn't find him or get a hold of his cell phone. The call I had with Mom and Dad. By then, I was sure that Rowan was hurt, or even dead. My parents had returned the next morning, and I had stayed up the entire night, trying to find where my brother had gone. I remembered the police when we filed a missing person report. But yet, we never found him. I sighed, holding back a quiet sob. It didn't hurt so much to think about it now, but it still made me feel gloomy. I don't know where he went. Nobody does. It was like he was just snatched up into thin air, out of existence. My family hasn't heard from him since. Emily looked at me in surprise, a hoof covering her mouth.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I sighed. No, it's fine. You asked, so the least I could do was answer. But still. I shook my head, noticing Emily's concerned expression. Besides, it's been a year since that happened. I've learned to live with it, so don't go worrying about me. Emily opened her mouth to protest, but quietly sighed as she leaned back against the bush again.
Having a sibling go missing, I can't imagine how it must be.
Silence drifted between us for a moment. Only the rustle of leaves above us prevailed as a gentle breeze passed through them. Emily glanced towards me again.
Were you and Rowan close?
I paused before nodding. Yeah, we were. He was my video game buddy, the one I always competed against whenever I wanted a challenge. Despite our own interests, we were basically best friends. I didn't want to make it known to Emily, but I wasn't too anxious to dwell on my lost brother any more than I had to. It just brought back painful memories. What about you, Emily? Are you close with any of your siblings? She nodded.
Yeah, I'm close with my only sibling, my sister, Les. She's into just about everything I am, but she can be a bit...
The Pegasus scratched her chin with a hoof, as if she were searching for the right word.
independently adventurous.
I raised an eyebrow, making Emily giggle as she clarified.
I mean that she will always want to handle a big problem by herself if she can. The bigger the problem, the more likely she'll try to jump headfirst into it without telling anyone else.
She chuckled to herself.
If I ever went missing like your brother did, she'd probably jump on her bike and ride across town looking for me.
But that was when another thought occurred to me. Wait a minute. Emily? Your dad was at the house before we left, and he was looking for you.
Yeah?
So, what would he do if you were nowhere to be found when you were supposed to be staying home sick from school? I honestly didn't know why neither of us had thought about that. But then again, we had been running from about 20 wiener dogs ever since we left Emily's house. Emily's eyes widened as she shot up from where she sat.
Oh no! They'd think I've gone missing, like I'd been kidnapped or something like that. Oh, they must be worried about me if they found me gone. Not just my dad, but my mom and Liz too. I've got to tell them I'm all right.
I quickly placed a hoof on Emily's shoulder, both to keep her from galloping out of our cover and to reassure her and calm her down.
Emily, it'll be all right. I'm sure they'll be worried, but you can't exactly go running home like this.
I poked one of her wings to emphasize my point.
Ignoring the fact that we can't even leave the bush right now without being seen, I think you'd make your family worry even more by showing up on their doorstep as a cyan pony.
Emily stayed silent, as if she were still debating what to do. I sighed.
Look, Emily, it'll be all right. At the end of tonight, the transformation should wear off and we'll both be human again. Then you'll be back in your house to get rid of your family's worries, okay? We just have to wait until then.
Again, Emily hesitated. Sighing to herself, she leaned back against the bush again.
Okay, you're right.
I could make out a pang of uncertainty in her voice, which made me reach out to her shoulder again. I smiled at her when she turned towards me.
Don't worry, Emily. I'll make sure you get home safely. And if your family asks where you've been, I'll handle it. And even take the blame if they don't like my answer.
Emily blinked in surprise.
But what are you going to tell them?
I gave her the goofiest grin I could muster.
I have no idea.
She just gave me a blank look, before a smile crept up around the edges of her lips. Pretty soon, she burst into a fit of giggles. I chuckled at her reaction.
You trust me, right?
Emily laughed, calming herself down from the giggles.
Okay, fine. I trust you.
We both smiled at each other, not even speaking. For me, it didn't really feel like I needed to say any more. All I really wanted to do was gaze into those big, beautiful eyes of hers, as well as her dazzling smile that sent my stomach going through a flock of butterflies. Heck, neither of us couldn't stop smiling. It just felt so good to be with some pony you counted as a friend. I leaned my head back against the bush's base, a tiny yawn trying to breathe through my mouth.
Man, I'm actually kind of tired. A lot has happened today, hasn't it?
Emily nodded, settling back into a comfortable position as well.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, I could use a quick nap.
I chuckled in reply.
Yeah, not much else we can do at the moment anyways, so why not? Right, Emily?
There was no response. I sluggishly glanced back towards my companion in fleeing, only to find that she had her eyes closed as she rested against the bush. She was already clocked out, so I decided to follow suit. My eyes closed, and I found myself drifting off until I fell asleep as well. Liz stared at the door in front of her, glancing back down at the hoodie to make sure she was at the right address. Sure enough, she was. There she stood at the doorstep of 1335 Pleasant Drive, supposedly the home of this Ben fellow. Liz reached up and rang the doorbell, though as she did, she was slightly worried as to what she'd find on the other side of the door. The image of Emily bound and gagged, while an insane creeper stood over her with wandering eyes, drifted into Liz's thoughts, making her gag in disgust. But those thoughts were quickly blown aside as the door swung open, revealing an older woman, probably in her 40s. The woman blinked in surprise when she found the 14-year-old girl standing on her doorstep.
Oh, may I help you?
Liz cleared her throat, seeing that there wasn't any threat here.
Hi? I came in to return this to Ben.
She held up the hoodie.
Do you know where he is?
The woman obviously recognized the sweater, judging from the size she made.
That boy is always leaving his things everywhere. If it weren't for me, he'd probably have lost everything he owns. I thought I raised him better, but I guess not.
Liz guessed this lady was Ben's mother, and she was starting to wonder about his mom's comment about him leaving his things everywhere. Did that include his clothes in random people's houses? Ben's mother sighed.
Well, I'm sorry, but he's not here at the moment. He said he was at his friend's house last I heard from him.
Who's his friend?
Liz asked, hoping she knew exactly who it was. After all, Emily knew a lot of kids at school, and Liz knew where most of them lived. Ben's mother paused in thought.
I think it was a friend he met just yesterday, some girl named Angela Ravendale.
Oh, I know Angela.
Liz knew Angela quite well, actually. She was one of Liz's favorites from Emily's friends. The crazy blonde reminded her of her favorite pony, Pinkie Pie.
Well, that's good, I suppose.
Ben's mother shrugged as she took the hoodie from Liz's grasp.
I'll just hold on to this until Ben gets home.
Liz nodded and thanked the woman, before turning back to the sidewalk where her bike stood on its kickstand. She hopped on the bike and began pedaling away through town. She knew exactly where Angela lived, and this Ben fellow was supposedly there as well. And if he was there, then it was more than likely that Emily was there too. All Liz could do was breathe a tiny sigh of relief at knowing Angela was there too. If either of the two knew where Emily was, then it couldn't be bad. Not if Angela was in on it. Angela paced furiously around the edges of her basement. Her lips tightened in a grimace. The reason behind her pacing was because, like always, she had a problem and she couldn't seem to figure out why it was there. She scowled a bit at the cement floor in the center of the large but unfinished room. The whole basement, save her own room and the bathroom, was just sturdy wood beams for walls and pure smooth cement for the floor. Perfect for using circle rituals. At the center of the basement, on the cement floor, was a chalk circle, with hundreds of lines, glyphs, sigils, and other things. All the components for the ley lines of a circle magic ritual. Of course, the problem was, at the moment, the chalk circle was glowing with a rainbow of colorful lights. It didn't normally do that unless it was being used. Angela frowned in annoyance as she kept staring at it, like it was the one question on an easy test that had somehow stumped her.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Angela muttered to herself, inspecting every inch of the circle.
First the number of targets were doubled, then the speed of the transformation doubled, and now this? There's no way the circle could be glowing unless it's being used. But I just used it this morning to transform Lyle and Emily.
The sound of footsteps descending down the stairs and into the basement cut Angela's train of thought short. She turned around to see Ben reach the bottom of the staircase. He quirked an eyebrow. "You figured it out yet?" Angela shook her head, making Ben sigh a bit. "Ugh, you've been at this for the past hour. I'm surprised you haven't figured out what the heck is going on." Angela gave him a bemused look.
Well, we both know it's doing this because we added an extra circle into the glyphs. But why it's glowing? It just doesn't make any sense.
She put her hands on her hips as she scowled down at the glowing circle.
Somebody would have to be using it for this to be happening. There's a lack of a person using it and a lack of effect as far as I know. I don't even feel the tiniest bit of chi flowing from this thing.
Angela sighed again, defeatedly.
Well, if I know anything, if you can't figure something out yourself, turn to the next best source of info. The internet!
She gestured for Ben to follow her.
We can use the computer in my room. Hopefully we can figure this out together.
Ben shrugged as he followed. Why not? Liz stood at the front door of Angela's house, taking a deep breath to calm herself. On the way over, a small fear had grown in her mind, one that wondered if Angela or this Ben guy really knew where Emily was or not. If not, then Liz knew she'd hit a dead end on this lead. If that happened, she had no idea what she'd do to keep up her search for her missing sister. Gingerly, Liz knocked on the door and waited. And waited. And waited. Liz frowned as she noticed that the entire house was silent. She couldn't hear anything from the inside, and it was apparent that no one was coming to answer the door. Maybe Angela wasn't home? She glanced towards the driveway adjacent to the house. Sure enough, Angela's car was there, an old beat-up pink Volkswagen. Liz had seen it before whenever Angela happened to stop by her house. So it was more than likely that Angela was here if the car was. Frowning to herself, Liz muttered aloud.
Hopefully there is somebody here. Someone who can tell me where Emily is.
A bit cautious, Liz grabbed the doorknob in front of her. But when she turned it, she flinched in surprise as the door swung open in her grasp, completely unlocked.
That's weird. Who leaves their door unlocked?
Liz poked her head inside the house, calling out.
Anyone home? Hello?
Again, she was greeted by silence. Liz paused for a few moments before shrugging to herself.
Well, if no one's home, then they won't mind if I take a peek around here.
As quietly as possible, just in case there actually was someone home, Liz entered the home and closed the door behind her. She cringed slightly as she realized that she was technically breaking and entering, but as long as she didn't touch anything and got out before anyone saw her, except maybe Angela or Emily, then she'd be fine. Remaining as quiet as possible, Liz navigated through the house, searching high and low for any clues. But as she searched, there wasn't much to find. The house was just like any other you'd find, a bit modern with all the usual comforts. A TV, a sofa, and a coffee table in the living room, a clean countertop in the kitchen beside the fridge, wooden floors and carpet for different rooms. But there really wasn't anything that could be considered as a lead towards Emily's whereabouts. That is, until Liz spotted a staircase leading towards the basement. But there was another detail she noticed. The bottom of the stairs were lit by a flurry of luminescent lights, as if someone were using a disco ball down there. Liz hesitated. Had someone really been down there this entire time? It was bad enough that she had gone inside unannounced, but she also wasn't sure who to expect down there, besides possibly Angela. Shaking off her uneasiness, Liz made her way down the stairs, one hand against the wall to help balance herself in her effort to stay silent with her steps. Once she reached the bottom of the stairs, Liz found herself in an unfinished basement. The floor was only cement, and all the walls were either the building's foundation or wooden beams. Except for the furthest section from the stairs, where actual walls and carpet were visible, the whole of the basement looked like an unfinished project set aside for later. But as she stepped out into the basement, Liz froze in place as her eyes descended onto the cement floor. There lay the source of the strange lights she had seen before. It was a strange circular pattern, which extended to a diameter of 5 feet across the floor. On closer inspection, Liz noted that it was made up of what seemed to be white chalk, but the rainbow lights dancing from it suggested otherwise. Curious, Liz crouched down to her knees to get a closer look.
What is this?
Never before had she seen glowing chalk, and she doubted anything like this was sold anywhere. The more she stared at it, the more it felt otherworldly. Liz had to wonder why something like this was down here. She had been on the hunt to find her sister, which led her here, but finding an ethereal circle of chalk was something she wasn't expecting to find. Was this here just by accident? Or was it connected to Emily's disappearance?
Why would Angela have something like this? Where did she get it?
Liz suddenly realized that her curiosity was getting the best of her when she noticed that her hand was reaching towards the glowing circle. Liz's heart jumped to her throat as her hand touched the chalk line, her touch causing the glowing chalk to suddenly spike in brightness.
Oh my gosh, why did I do that?
Liz gasped, as the brightness instantly blinded her, making the girl shield her eyes with her hands. Liz feared for the worst when she set off the crazy glowing circle of supernaturalness she found in Angela's basement. But, after a few moments, Liz realized that nothing happened. She blinked her eyes open, only to find the bright light around the circle was gone, leaving just plain white chalk on the ground where it had been before. Liz glanced around the room for any signs of change, but saw nothing out of the ordinary than when she had first came down there.
Huh? Liz?
Liz quickly turned around where she was crouched, only to find Angela standing at the far end of the basement. Behind her stood another person, a guy with blonde hair and black clothes, and Liz was sure she had never seen him before. Angela stared at Liz with a confused expression until her eyes rested on the circle that had been glowing moments before. At that point, her face almost looked panicked.
Liz? Why are you here? What did you do to the ritual circle?
Liz stumbled back a bit, just like a child who had been caught with her hand in the cookie jar.
What?
She paused, trying to stay calm.
Sorry, Angela. I was just what? Searching through her home for any signs of a creeper who took Emily? I was just searching for my sister. Do you know where Emily is?
A moment of silence passed as Angela and the guy behind her gave each other wary looks, as if they were having a silent conversation of their own. Angela glanced back towards Liz.
Don't worry, Liz. I know where Emily is.
Liz's eyes widened.
You do?
Angela nodded as she made her way over to where Liz stood.
Yeah, she's with a friend who's taking very good care of her, I'm sure.
Who?
Liz asked. Angela gave a reassuring smile.
You know that guy Emily was supposed to be on a date with today?
Liz nodded.
Well, she's out with him right now.
Liz paused for a moment, her lip curled in a confused frown.
Is his name Ben here?
The guy behind Angela stepped forward, chuckling. Nope, sorry, I'm Ben. Liz sported a very confused look.
But if you're Ben,
She pointed an accusatory finger at the guy.
why was your hoodie at my house? Were those your clothes you left at the house with Emily's PJs?
Ben's expression turned just as confused as Angela's. Very confused, to say the least. The two of them shared another hesitant glance between each other. Just from their faces, Liz could tell there was something they weren't telling her. She was determined to find out.
What's going on? Where is Emily right now?
Angela and Ben exchanged worried looks, probably because both of them were surprised that Liz realized something was amiss. Angela bit her lip as she looked to Ben.
I think we may have to tell her.
Tell me what?
Liz inquired. Angela paused as Ben nodded in silent approval, before sighing as she turned back to Liz.
Well, I'm not sure if there's any easy way to explain this, but...
She paused, allowing her usual Angela be Pinkie Pie smile to suddenly spring back into play.
I turned your sister into a pony from My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. And now she's probably out with Lyle, the guy she was supposed to go on a date with. And he's also a pony.
Liz made a face that could have been described as the most confused face on the planet.
Wait. What?
Ben facepalmed. It looks like we're going to have some explaining to do.